So we know who you are and who I am.
Absolutely.
Okay, then. So we're talking physical deepness or emotional depth?
Both, actually. And the one being more important to women, of course, is the emotional depth.
I just want to introduce Frank before you go on, because you're here from Montreal. You're visiting, and you do a radio show in Montreal
And what's it called?
Frank Talks.
The show is called Frank Talks, Pleasures, and Lifestyles.
And it's an alternative lifestyles
It covers
radio show.
a variety of lifestyles. I usually focus on the alternative lifestyles because I don't think that they get enough respectable coverage.
Okay, and you're coming out with a book, which
and
is
it's
called what is it again?
It's called Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, A Real Man's Guide to the Emotional Needs of Women.
Exactly.
The title of that book sounds very...
Sounds very offensive. This is not a book written for women. It's not a book written for couples who are happy. This is a book written for men in a way that men will understand. It's written in a very crude, very rude, very direct manner, but that's because that's how men process language. That's
Okay,
how men
so give
But
us an
helping them to
example.
understand women, obviously.
Exactly.
Give us
Right?
an
Because
example.
so many men don't understand women, and that's where a lot of the
Yeah.
roots of relationship problems come from.
I don't understand men. Tell me something about how a woman gets her emotional needs met by men. Because usually I don't find that happens. I just spend the night with them, get up in the morning and say, nice night, goodbye.
Well, if that's what you're doing, you're looking to satisfy a physical need there, not an emotional one.
I realize that.
And you may be or you may not be satisfied physically. However, if you don't address the emotional need, women cannot find any true fulfillment. And it is a man's responsibility to address those emotional needs, but what are most men taught? Most men are taught to suppress their emotion.
How do men be more emotional that women can relate to? How do they do it? Tell me. Give me an example. I want to know, like, now.
Okay, what you're doing right now is you're testing me. The words that you're saying is tell me now. The meaning of those words are I want my answer right away. The emotional need that you're giving me right now is are you dominant enough to put me in my place and allow me to be relieved of the responsibility to oversee this interaction? Now, how can I address this? The first way I can address this is with playful arrogance, where I might make a joke out of it, you might laugh out of it, but you'll get the message. Mm-hmm. That's not the one that I personally cater to because I end up being too vicious. Playful arrogance will actually scare a woman and make her even more afraid. It doesn't address her emotional need.
Okay, so how do you address a woman's emotional need? I want to know this.
I would, well, essentially...
Because I don't think it's possible for men to meet emotional needs of women. I've never seen it happen, but maybe it happens
well,
on some.
It's not something that you would see happen. It's something that you would feel happen. And some women are so damaged emotionally that they're incapable of feeling an emotional need being satisfied because they are incapable of feeling any particularly good emotions.
Bingo.
Okay. So tell me a little bit more about this emotional need business. How do people recognize, and what is an emotional need in the first place?
Okay, a woman's emotional need is a woman's need to feel special to the man that she's with. At the heart of every emotional need
Okay.
is a woman's desire, her emotional need, not a physical need, her emotional need to feel special to the man she's with. There are about 10 pillars that represent the different emotional needs of women. So the first pillar, of course, is will her reputation be hurt by the man that she is particularly interested in?
Okay.
Will he sacrifice his own reputation to protect her reputation? Will he be discreet?
Okay.
Can she feel safe? Because feeling safe in terms of reputation for a woman is much more important.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
She was 19, her husband was 51, they had 6 children. He dies, she marries another guy when she's 45. He turns out to be gay. this woman did not get her emotional needs met, right? And I think my whole life I saw that where women didn't get married to get their emotional needs met. It was mostly get married for status, because you went from your father's house to your parents' house. And women were not thought intelligent enough to even keep their own money when I grew up. My mother said, don't worry about it. You'll find your husband will take care of you. They treated them like children.
Well, I'd actually really like to address this because I do talk about this in my book.
Yeah.
We're going to look at women's status within the law. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, women have been on a very, very unfair end of that muddy stick, where they simply were not giving the rights to have the opportunity to build their own lives. I'm not going
They
to
define themselves through men.
They did define themselves through men. What's happened now, and this is where men are damaged, and our current generation of men are very damaged. We were brought up, at least my generation was, that men and women are equal. That's not entirely accurate. Men and women must have equal rights under the law. We need the equal rights to protection, equal rights to safety.
Yeah.
That's what equality between men and women was designed to bring in. Militant feminism did a wonderful job of pushing that issue. They brought to the forefront violence against women as a number one issue, and militant feminism, for whatever damage they may or may not have done, the one great thing about them, they brought the issue that women must be treated as equals under the law. But something happened. Men being brought up in this generation were brought up to believe men and women are equal. Therefore, I don't have to treat her like a lady. I can treat her as one of the guys. I can communicate with her as one of the guys.
So we've lost those courtship patterns. I believe what's happening now is there's so much alienation between the sexes. I've met so many men who are totally fed up. They call themselves the scarred veterans of the romantic wars. It's getting so that men and women can look after their financial needs. Women don't have to get married to have their needs taken care of financially, or the status thing or whatever. And now men and women just get together for the old roll in the hay.
Now let's look at that particular example. We've reached a point in society where every person is given the opportunity, not the right, but the opportunity to fulfill all of their physical needs: shelter, clothing, food, transportation. But everybody has ignored the emotional needs.
Yeah.
Love was not given the value that love is given as in North America at this time. So what I'm going to throw into this dialogue is the fact that the structures that existed at one time may, not necessarily, but may have addressed the emotional needs of people indirectly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whereas now, our structure in society doesn't allow for the structure to support people's emotional needs. People seem to have gotten confused on the word commitment. You're not committed to the person that you're involved with. You are committed to the relationship. You're not committed to her, and you're not committed to him. You need to be committed to the idea of commitment.
So is that the problem?
Is that the problem? I think that's one of the elements. People seem to forget that, hey, you may not like your partner all of the time. You may, in fact, not love your partner at some point. You may even hate your partner. But you know what? You're not necessarily committed to just your partner. You're committed to the life that you agreed that you were going to build with that partner, which may or may not include children.
And that's the institution of marriage, in a sense. You're committed to that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, my question to you, because of the subject matter of your show, which is, and you've mentioned before we went on the air that you had some problems when you would approach radio stations in Montreal. You were received very badly.
Some of the people that I would choose to interview on my show, Frank Talks Pleasures and Lifestyles, not only involved people who, let's say, promoted a staunch monogamous lifestyle. It would also interview people who lived, let's say, the swinger lifestyle, would interview people in open marriages, would also interview people who were in polyamorous triads. That's where three people get together to have one ongoing serious relationship, possibly with other partners. I would interview people with different sexual fetishes, whatever they may be, looking at the different lifestyles and asking some very serious, respectable questions. I wasn't a shock jock, and I'm not a shock jock. I will not ask people questions just to put them on the spot.
Okay.
How I was received? When I sent out that proposal that simply detailed, and as honestly as I could, what I would cover, I had one of the station administrators of a particular community radio station that I will not mention on air call me up, leave a very nasty telephone message using words like filth, dirty laundry, A few other words that I will not mention here on air because I don't even allow that for my own show. The only word I can think of it was abusive.
Okay. Now, two directions I want to go, but one of them is we have, things are changing in society. So we're coming out of a world where, as Sue mentioned earlier, you were either married or you were single, but so-called alternative lifestyles were something that either weren't talked about or maybe they didn't exist to the same extent that they exist today. And I want to ask you, because you're doing this as a show, what's happening in society, and where is this a good thing? Yeah, like the breakdown of traditional institutions like marriage, and maybe what does this have to do with having your emotional needs met?
I can answer that. I'm really glad you brought this up. The first answer, I should say, is identity. People struggle with their own self-identity. If everybody is expected to do the same thing, and there is a formula which everybody is brought up to follow, you grow up, you get married, I am either single, I am either married, I am either seeking a monogamous partner, or I am in a monogamous relationship, just like everybody else. I don't have to figure out who I am. I can just follow through a system, and through the labeling and the categorizing of that system, I can feel comfortable. What's happening now? Mm-hmm. The structure that were put in place, we find out don't apply to everyone.
Yeah, not everyone's straight. Some people are gay.
Stay tuned, folks. Anything can happen.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes the perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Look, I have a big problem. I have had 100 boyfriends in the last 25 years.
Just one problem?
I can't seem to meet a guy that I can really open up to. I just use these guys for sex. Why I only go after men for sex, and why I don't get my emotional needs met for men.
I think you already said that. Something about emotional damage at a young age. I think you covered that one already. That's when I said bingo. Do you remember?
No.
Bingo.
Emotional damage. Quickly, I want the Frank version.
You're getting exactly what it is you seek on the inside.
I'm getting exactly what it is I seek.
You don't strike me as the type of woman who wants her emotional needs met, because I think that would tap into something that probably is more than what you're ready to handle right now.
I see. Okay, maybe that's right, yeah. My emotional needs for respect?
Feeling respected is not an emotional need.
What is it?
It's an intellectual construct. It's something that is logical, but it's not necessarily an emotional need.
Define an emotional need again. It's feeling special.
An emotional need is defined as something that will make a woman feel special to a particular male of her attentions.
Okay, to make her feel special.
All right, and at the heart, so that's at the heart of every emotional need. There's about 10 different emotional needs that a woman, emotionally speaking, must be met.
Okay.
If a man can meet these 10 emotional needs, women will tend to not be unfaithful to him.
Okay. And those include just...
Number 1, will her reputation be protected?
Okay. Number 2.
Number 2, her need to feel safe, physically safe.
Oh, safe.
By him from other attackers.
Okay. 3.
Another emotional need would be her addressing her fear of abandonment.
Abandonment. Okay.
No woman wants to be abandoned.
Okay.
And again, it comes from that fear of pregnancy, where she might end up being pregnant and then being abandoned.
Yeah.
Our modern society now has it such where a woman who is a single mother can very well survive. And depending on her education, her employment opportunities, she can very well thrive.
Yeah.
However, we're not talking here about the last 50 to 100 years of evolution. We're talking here of the last 4,000 or 5,000 years of evolution that have conditioned women and men to respond to certain things.
Okay, so fear of abandonment, her feeling safe,
Okay,
her reputation.
She needs to feel an emotional range. That's one of the biggest mistakes that most men make.
What's an emotional range?
Here's the mistake most men make. They try to make a woman happy What they don't realize is that women are much more emotional than men. Women experience emotions differently than men. Whereas a guy would like to be happy generally most of the time, a woman needs to experience intense happiness as well as intense frustration, intense sorrow, intense joy, intense ecstasy, intense anger. She needs that emotional range. This is why a woman will tend to stay within a dysfunctional relationship, whereas most men will drop it once it becomes dysfunctional for them.
Good point, because women can handle a better range and up and down, but men, it upsets them.
That's right. Let me give you...
That's a terrific idea.
Let me
you're a genius.
So, as a man, if you can address her emotional need, that's what you can address directly. Women will feel that. They will feel that you understand them on a level that a woman processes information. Men don't tend to think that way because every time a man gets overly emotional, it's not something that is natural for him to do. He has to go through it through an intellectual understanding. This is why my book is written as Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test. Now, is everything out of a woman's mouth a test? Of course not. That's not reality. No woman is consciously testing a man for every little thing.
And what's she testing him for?
Whether or not he can address her emotional needs. And she's not doing this on a conscious level, it's all unconscious. It's based on how she feels. Women don't do it consciously. However, for a man, for the way a man understands the world, for the way a man processes information, by writing it as a man saying, everything out of our mouth is a test, that's the way you need to think about it. Mm-hmm. He'll understand it better than some woman saying, you have to address the little girl in me. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get that.
Okay, this is really fascinating stuff. Let's take a little break.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book, written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
Hi, we're back. We're back here with Frank.
Because I have to be.
Frank, because I have to be. That's right. That's why I couldn't remember it. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Frank, because you have to be.
Correct.
Frank, because you have to be.
So I wanted to get back to this, the change, what's happening in society. So what's happening, obviously, the negative reaction you got when you took it to that radio station in Montreal was because people who are kind of taught in the old paradigm are reacting to what's happening because and I'm struggling with it myself. So I want, I'm trying to understand what's going on, what it means for us. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Where are we going as a society? Is marriage a doomed institution? I mean, these are just some of the questions. I don't know if you can address.
I can address all of them, actually.
Okay, great.
Part of what I've done in my radio show by interviewing people who live a variety of different pleasures and lifestyles has taught me a few things. And that is, nobody's got it figured out. There is no one ideal relationship structure. There is only the ideal relationship structure for you. And in order for you to find that out, you need to come to terms with who you are. It takes a lot of self-knowledge, self-discovery. Most people haven't done that. They haven't asked themselves those questions.
And historically, our identity, as you sort of alluded to earlier, it was determined by the structures that society provided for us. We fit ourselves into a role, right? So if those roles include either, if you're married, you're married. If you're not, you become a nun or a priest.
Exactly. The idea is that the society told you who you were. Mm-hmm. You didn't have to think about it. Mm-hmm. Now what happens when you impose a structure that doesn't incorporate the realities? Reality number one, not everybody can be fit into just a limited number of categories. There are people who may need to define themselves in a manner that is not already prescribed or even allowed in certain cultures.
Now, and we've seen what's happened. In the past, we've had, for example, gay people who, because they didn't want to deal with the fallout of being gay in a society that can't handle people being gay, would get married, and what we've seen more recently is people who have finally, maybe after being married for years and years and years, finally say, you know what, I just can't take it anymore. I'm going to come out and be gay, and that's just the way that it is.
You had brought up the question before, is this a good thing, is this a bad thing? My response is as follows. It's always best to know the truth and to learn to deal with truth. In the short term, it's a lot of pain. In the short term, there are bumps and bruises, and you know what? There's going to be some people who don't deserve to get hurt by that process. For example, the person who discovers that their spouse is actually gay, they're going to get hurt. Yes. You know what? They were living an illusion anyway. And maybe if they never knew about it, sure, you can say, well, it would have been better, nobody would have gotten hurt. There was someone already hurting, the person who was at the core of that illusion. However, if people learn to deal with truth, in the short term, lots of pain, lots of change, lots of uncertainty, it will be a shake-up. The long-term approach, though, the long-term benefits, is that we will eventually reach a point where self-discovery and learning to identify yourself and have your own identity based on who you are and what you actually want out of life will become something that is encouraged instead of discouraged. The short term, is it bad? Well, it's painful, but I wouldn't call it bad. If discovering truth becomes something that we define as bad, just imagine what would happen if the only thing you were allowed to believe was someone else's lie, not your own truth.
Right, that's it. Can I just ask Frank a question? Tell me, how has this knowledge played out in your own life? Have your relationships improved?
Absolutely.
And tell us how that's happened. Give us an example. Before and after.
Before I went through this catharsis, I would sometimes end up in a monogamous relationship. And maybe I would want to date someone else, but I couldn't. And what ended up happening was I ended up resenting the partner I was with. And that doesn't bode well for the relationship. And you're dealing with a lot of negative emotion that you keep bringing back into it and back into your own relationship. Where I'm at now, I have experimented with the idea of being in open relationships, redefining what commitment means to me. And I've experienced things such as a polydate.
What's that?
A polydate is when you're dating more than one person, and you all go out on a date together, the three or more of you. I was dating two women. I had two girlfriends at the same time. They had never met. I wanted to spend Valentine's Day with both of them because Valentine's Day you're supposed to be with your partner. What do you do when you have more than one? I brought them both together. I met up with one in the morning. We stayed together all day. We took the day off of work. In the evening, we went to pick up the third person, who was me and two women. We went out to the restaurant. After the restaurant, I took them out to a sex shop. I had given each of them a gift certificate for anything they want in a particular sex boutique.
How much money did they each get?
Well, that's not important. We then went to back to my place for chocolate fondue and fruit. It was a really wonderful evening, a really good time. So I won't. I'm not going to get into any specifics other than to say that I'm going to protect their reputation. Nothing happened other than a wonderful date, but that's one of the things I've been able to experience.
Okay.
And how did those two girls feel about each other?
The attitude that they had with one another was that I had been honest from the very beginning with both of them. And they were actually just very curious about one another. Mm-hmm. I make it a point that I only will associate with people who I deem of value, people who I believe are good people at heart. And they actually, they never became the best of friends. But there was no animosity, there was no meanness, there was no nastiness, no insults, nothing like that. Everybody understood where everybody stood, and it was a chance for each girl to see how I was with the other girl.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you about, it seems to me that society today compared to 10 years ago and then even 20 years ago, what we're seeing in our society is an ever-increasing emphasis on sex everywhere. In the media, we've got sex shops everywhere where 20 years ago it was very rare. And I'm just interested in your opinion on what's happening there.
What I believe, and you should understand, I am not an academic in this area. This is strictly my opinion, and it is not based on any research other than what I've experienced in my own life. Here's what I think, and I could be wrong. I think that the sexual aspect of our interactions has been so repressed that it has exploded. That once we finally opened up that small little doorway to say, well, it's okay to express this tiny element, everything that had been repressed at that point came rushing out and exploded in everyone's face to the point where people are so afraid now, and I think it's coming out of fear. They're afraid that their sexuality will be repressed again, that they are forcing it in everyone's face. They're going to the other extreme. Where I think it's going to go, I think everybody's going to realize that, yes, sex has its place in the world, and it feels really great, and it's wonderful, but you know what? You could be getting all the sex you want, but the rest of your life still needs attention too. You still have to take care of your health, you still have to get up and go to work, you still have to make a living, you still have to live out your passions and find some way to contribute. And if you're getting a certain amount of sex in that process, hey, most people are just basically happy with that. If sex becomes the overall focus, it's like anything else. No matter what it is, sex can give you pleasure, so can lasagna, so can chocolate, so can a really great job. But if that's the only thing that your life is composed of, it isn't a life worth bragging about or living.
Because life has to be a whole life.
A life has to be balanced. Sex is one part of your life, but when sex takes over, it's just like anything else taking over. Anytime your life focuses on only one thing, only that one element,
you're out of balance.
You're out of balance, and you won't experience the full range of pleasure life has to offer.
Do you counsel people? You seem to have a lot of insider information.
Do
people come to you for advice?
On my website, I actually do have a page called Frank Advice, where I give honest advice. People might write in asking me questions such as, my wife and I have been married for a certain amount of years. We have a great relationship. We've started talking about our fantasies to one another. It turns out that she defines herself as bisexual, although she's never been with a woman. He considers himself perfectly straight, but he does have a fantasy to have a threesome. Now they're trying to figure out whether or not they should even live out the fantasy, and if they do, what are the rules and how you go about that. This is not something that you can discuss with your neighbors. It certainly isn't something many people feel comfortable enough talking with their families about. And there's so much misinformation out there because when it comes to a person's sexuality, it's very easy to be taken advantage of. It's very easy to listen to the wrong person. I base my consultations not only on my own life experiences where I've done really, really well and where I've screwed up and where I have felt pain when someone else has screwed up. So I just give them the benefit of my advice, but I am by no means qualified to be a counselor of any sort.
But you seem to have studied this in quite depth. I mean, I've never heard any of
I'm not an academic in the area, though. I don't have those credentials.
But even so, I'm saying that the guys who have the credentials are getting their information from somewhere. But it sounds to me like your information has sort of come from self-study.
Yeah, and just for a great example, I think.
That's my personal view.
I still don't understand what you mean by that statement. You're trying to hide the fact that you're attracted to someone that makes you lonely?
People are afraid to show that they're attracted to someone because, especially in a work environment, where do most adults who are not married and who are single meet the most people? They do it through the work environments. Why? Because they're not in school anymore. They're not meeting students in new classes anymore. They have their lives. They have bills to pay. They're in a rut. They work how many hours in a particular job a week? Let's say on average, 40 to 50? Are they going to see the same people on the train every morning when they're going to work? They're going to see the same people on their way home from work, assuming they have a regular schedule. If they have kids to take care of and they happen to be alone, guess what? There isn't much time left for socializing.
Right.
You see somebody who you find attractive, you might be afraid to go up to them and say, well, if they're not attracted to me, I got to face that person every day.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So you're more reserved?
Absolutely.
And it's fear of rejection, too.
The fear of rejection was always there. The fear of rejection has gotten worse now because you're not only afraid of being rejected by that one person, you're afraid about your reputation within that circle because now everybody says, hey, that person tried and got rejected. That makes them more afraid to do it. Here's what people need, and I've said this in the past, and a lot of people have argued with me, and you know what? I could be wrong. But this is how I live my life. Despite all the fact that every single one of your physical needs can get met, all of your basics, your shelter, your clothing, your food, your transportation, whatever, people still need to connect.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
And if you don't connect with other people, people need people. What they forget is that you don't need any particular person. It's the same thing in a work situation. Let's apply it to the corporate world. We're based here in Toronto. Can be considered a very corporate-type city, so let's base it there. You need clients. You don't need any particular client. So if a client comes into your life and abuses you and tries to take more than their fair share, tries to muscle you into a corner, you know what? You need clients. You don't need a particular client. You need sponsors. You don't need a particular sponsor. You may need to connect with people, but you don't need to connect with someone just for the sake of connecting. Now, while you're processing that,
Yeah, let's think about that for a minute.
Frank Talks is sponsored in part by Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, a man's guide to the emotional needs of women. Ladies, do you want the man in your life to understand you on your level? Do you want your man to be able to listen to and address all of your emotional needs? Show him how much you really want your relationship to be the best it can be. Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test makes a perfect gift. The book written by a man, for men, is endorsed by every woman that reads it. This book is a guide for men to understand exactly what a woman means when she speaks. Is that worth changing your life forever? Buy this book at franktalks.com now.
All right, we're back. We're having a great time here.
And Natradio is always a place where just organic radio happens, and we had Frank drop in. Didn't even know he was going to be a guest until I started sitting in his lap, and he told me he knew how to meet a woman's emotional needs.
Although it's a little too late for you.
Sometimes I feel it is. I haven't got a clue how to get my emotional needs met. Now, let's not talk about me, but if I was another woman, how would she get her emotional needs met?
Listen,
well,
Frank,
the first thing, actually, I can answer that. In the break that just happened, it's the first time all day that you have spoken to me where you've shown me a little bit of vulnerability. Oh, yeah. Now, I'm not going to mention on air anything that you said, but you are finally a real person. It's the first time all day that we have had.
What was I before?
We don't want to know.
You were a character. Without making jokes here for a second, you were a character. You were putting on the same type of shield, the same type of mask that you normally present to others. And in the last 5 minutes, I actually got a glimpse of the color of your soul. I actually got a glimpse of what your aura looks like and feels like. And if you talk to people on that level more often, instead of putting up the mask that you think that they would like better, that would be the first step in coming to terms with who you are as a person. And what you just did right now is that you did not address her emotional need because she showed some vulnerability, and rather than encourage her and nurture the little girl in her, you just went ahead and did what the average guy does. Tries to put her down. And therefore, she's going to be more vicious with you when she tests you again. You've just brought it on yourself. You had the opportunity as a man to lead. You failed her test.
There
What do
you
you
go.
say to that, Hugh?
I'm speechless.
Here's a way to think about it if you really just want a standard rule to follow. How would you treat a 5-year-old child? Sometimes when you're dealing with adults, sometimes you need to be stern with them, and sometimes you need to be very caring and loving even when the person is behaving badly. Why? Because you understand that they're a 5-year-old child. So I'm going to present this next concept to you, and if you can at least understand this concept, you won't have to get into the extra details. Here it is. Even though a person may be physically of a certain age, how old they are emotionally may be a different age.
Oh, yeah, I can believe that.
So instead of talking to them as an 18-year-old, a 21-year-old, a 35-year-old, figure out how old they are emotionally and treat them the way you would treat a child of that age. You'd be amazed what kind of positive responses you get from just that.
I like that. So, well, we do that a lot in here. I mean, we throw a football around. I feel like a big kid when I'm in here. What about you, Hugh?
Well, that's child.
We play a lot in here.
We do. And,
yeah, we have fun.
But being childlike is different than being childish. Like, I think a person who's an emotionally adult, can still be childlike and have
That's
fun
right.
and play football
That's right.
and stuff like that.
But if someone is childish, that means that emotionally they are not adults, and therefore you have to treat them as emotional children. I was in
How do you do that?
the same way you would treat a child. When the child misbehaves, you get stern with them, not because you don't love them, but because you're trying to teach them a particular code of conduct, a particular code of behavior that's going to allow them to achieve whatever goals they want to achieve in life. It's going to allow them to interact with people.
You're doing what's best for the child.
Exactly. When your 5-year-old doesn't get the cookie that the 5-year-old wants and then throws a tantrum, you have to manage that. What do some people do? They just say, fine, here, have the cookie. But what are you teaching that child? You teach that child that as long as they throw a tantrum, they'll get their way. What happens when this child now goes into their first job interview and on the first day of the job sees something they don't like, throws a major tantrum, and the kid gets fired? Now that kid doesn't have the means to support themselves as an independent. In this effect, giving that child the cookie was the wrong thing to do. Perhaps a stern warning to say, no, this is not the type of behavior to be throwing in the mall just because you don't get your way. Now you're going to lose certain privileges. You don't get to watch TV for a week. This type of attitude. When you treat adults in the same way, no, you are not to treat me in this manner. I will not accept it. Therefore, if you continue to behave like that, I will not give you my attention. I will not acknowledge you as an adult. You get people to show you more respect than anything else. Why? Because you're not talking to them and saying, you know, you're a 25-year-old, you should know better. Well, shame is not always a great motivator. However, if you turn around to the person and you talk to them as if they are a 13-year-old, because maybe emotionally they're 13 years old, look, I really like you, I really care about you, I love you even, but I will not accept this type of behavior from you in this particular space. You'd be amazed. That's how you would talk to a 13-year-old. And when they misbehave, that's the way I talk to them. I talk to them in an age-appropriate manner.
That sounds revolutionary.
How do you ascertain the emotional age of someone?
Well, that I can only say comes with experience, because you have to actually have some experience with children. If you have younger siblings, if you have your own children, you usually are able to gauge that. Usually, as an adult, there are just certain rules about being an adult. You know that you're not always going to get your way. You know that, you know what, sometimes life is unfair. And you're not going to be happy all the time. And as an adult, you need to be able to manage that. If somebody is not even capable of handling that, if they are unable to function day to day in their life, that's because on some emotional level, they haven't grown up yet. So that would be one of the ways that I personally ascertain it. But again, sometimes you just have to sit down and you have to talk to people, and you have to talk to them for a couple of hours even to really figure out where they're at emotionally.
And how do you figure that out?
How do I figure
where someone is emotionally?
Well, that's the question I've just answered.
By their behavior?
By their behaviors, specifically where they are in their life, how they handle crisis situations, how they handle bad moods. You know, an adult is expected that, hey, you know what, just because you had a bad morning, don't come into my face and yell at me and be rude with me. An adult is able to say, yes, I had a bad day at the morning, but I'm coming to the office and I'm going to treat everybody civilly, because I can understand that just because I'm in a bad mood doesn't mean I have to take it out on someone else. That's an adult thinking. Somebody who comes in and says, I've had a bad morning and so-and-so did this to me and so-and-so did that to me, they have no control over their behavior. They're letting their emotions dictate their behavior. That might be a sign. In terms of what my stand-up comedy is, based on the book Everything Out of Her Mouth is a Test, it's a much more gruff character. I don't go on stage to educate. I go on stage to make a few people laugh based on some similar concepts that my book covers in order to promote the book.
Can you give us a couple of lines, scripted lines from that routine? Can I see this person come out here? Or? I'm sort of curious now that you've mentioned it.
It wouldn't be appropriate. My act is very crude, very rude. I start off by saying, everything out of her mouth is a test, and I give an example. When a woman says, do I look fat in this dress? What is the emotional need behind that question? If you say, yes, you look fat in that dress, she may not react positively. If you say, no, you don't look fat in that dress, she may also react negatively.
Yeah.
Because she may assume, well, he's lying to me, he won't protect my reputation, so on and so forth. So the answer I give is, take her by the hand, twirl her around, look her up or down, then grab her, rip her clothes off, and penetrate her. Now, I don't use that language when I'm in the act. I use a lot more foul language, which I will not do here. And how does that address the emotional need? Well, she'll turn around and say, you're a pig, you're a jerk. The man should respond, yes, I'm a pig. I'm a jerk. That's my job as a man. The book will go into it and explain how the man must be responsible for the sex in the relationship. The man must be responsible for the sexual nature of the relationship. It has to be his fault. That's why women truly love bad boys, because it's his fault that they're having sex, not her fault. She doesn't have to take the responsibility. She can just enjoy the ride. But in the act, I will say something along the lines of, the woman may get angry, the woman may say, he's such a jerk, he's such an honest jerk. An honest jerk? Wow, I'm really turned on. I have to go have sex with this man now. I make fun. I create a persona that is, a frustration personified at the whole concept. I actually go into, in part of my act, where I say, the real difference between flirting and sexual harassment is about 30 pounds. Now, that's just a joke, and when I'm on stage and I'm dressed up and yelling into the microphone, sure, it can be funny. But you know what? That's an aspect of my own personal frustration, seeing how I'm the same guy with the same life experiences and the same jokes and the same mannerisms and the same behaviors, going after the same type of women. But if I'm attractive, it's flirting. The character that I play is not a real character. It's not really who I am. It's a personification of the absolute angst and frustration that took me on the journey to write my book. It's called The Story of Frank B Kermit, which is the character that I've developed when I was learning this. It contains every screw-up I've ever made and all the great things that have happened to me after this catharsis.
What totally impressed me was this idea that seems to make sense. And in fact, I don't understand it enough from our brief discussion today. I'm hoping maybe we'll get a chance to have some more discussions like this, because this is very interesting.
Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying this. Where I got that particular concept from, when I started on this journey, it was just a very bad experience that I had where I had my heart completely shattered. The first thing I started doing is I began to identify all of the male friends and colleagues that I had who are actually very successful with women and their relationships. So I simply went up to them and I said, what do you believe? What it is you do? How do you figure this out? Mm-hmm. In getting to know them and looking at what their base philosophies were and then looking at the way they acted on those base philosophies, the truth is many men who are very good with women don't know why they're good with women. They figure every guy is going to be that good with women. They can't properly give advice because they just figure, oh, you're really good at it. I'm sure you know what to do. You'll figure it out. The truth is, a lot of men don't. They don't know how to do this. They've been living in a system which has let them down. When the system no longer works for them, when buying her dinner, sending her flowers, being nice with her, trying to make her happy, when all of that at the end of the day doesn't work and she's out with some other guy that you find out and you're devastated, and the next thing you know, you have to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to abandon your family, maybe have to support your kids and change your whole life. You believed in a system that, guess what? It didn't work for you. Now they're lost. A lot of these men are lost, and they're trying to find some way to build up again.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's just men. I think that there's... I had a woman in here, and what she told me was, this is a city of very lonely people. Lots of lonely women who can't find a guy that can satisfy them, and lots of lonely guys who can't seem to get in touch with a woman.
A lot of people now are so afraid because they've mistaken initial communications as something bad. So the rule became you only approach someone who already finds you attractive. How do you figure that out when everybody is also trying to hide their emotions and trying to hide the fact that they're attracted to you? That's why you got a lot of lonely people out there. You see, a man is judged by how many women he's been with, and the more women he's been with, the higher his perceived value. However, a woman is judged by who she's been with.
Oh, interesting. And a man isn't very astute. Where did you learn all this stuff?
That's actually a very long story. I'm going to give you a very shortened version of it. I went through 3 or 4 very, very troubling periods of my life, starting when I was 16, when I got stood up at my prom. Around in my early 20s, after being involved with my ex-fiancé. We were together for about 3 years. That relationship ended very, very devastating. A few other incidents of that nature finally made me stop and say the rest of my life isn't worth putting together unless I can finally understand the dynamics in a relationship between men and women.
And I think it's something that isn't well understood.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.
When I dress up, it's all in the footwear. The
Oh,
majority of the money is in the footwear.
good idea.
Absolutely.
Because women look at shoes.
Absolutely.
Why do women look at shoes?
Women will look at shoes because shoes is a detail, and women will make judgments about how you take care of major elements of your life based on the small details, like your shoes. Shoes get scuffed. Shoes get dirty. It takes extra care to take care of shoes. Women who will put extra detail into their hair, into their makeup, want to see if a man will do the same thing. If a man doesn't take care of the tiny details, it means certain areas of his life are in shambles. Why? Not because that's a man's reality. That's a woman's reality. When a woman doesn't take care of details, she feels, not necessarily reality, she feels that her life is out of control when the details are not taken care of. So she, because that is her reality, she takes that perspective and superimposes it on the men. This is why when women see men wearing white socks with black pants, what's the rule of fashion? Color of the socks must match the color of the pants. When a woman sees a man wearing black pants and white socks, she immediately takes that subtle detail that is so important in her reality, and she'll make huge assumptions about the man who's wearing that and say, well, if he can't get his life together, why would I want to be approached by him?
Mm-hmm.
Here's another little thing just about how, and again, I base this only on my experience, not what I've studied. When I wear my alligator boots, gorgeous boots, and I wear my red burgundy fedora, a woman will look me up and down. She'll notice my boots, but she will come up to me and compliment me on the hat. However, when I wear the same hat and the same clothes and the same jewelry and the same outfit, but I'm wearing one of my regular black walking shoes, nothing special, just an average pair of $90 black walking shoes, a woman will look me up and down and she will not acknowledge me. She won't compliment me on the hat. It's the same hat, same outfit. But if I'm wearing the alligator boots, she'll compliment me on the hat, not the shoes. Although the shoes is what initially attracts her. Why? The shoes are a detail. Now, I should be very clear here that my black walking shoes, I don't take care of them. They're scuffed up. People have stepped on them. It's my everyday shoe. I go out there in the rain. But my alligator boots, I put on the mink oil. I scrub them. I clean them. I take excellent care of them. I spray them with weather-resistant silicone. I take care of them. And I talk about the details and how women pay attention to details. She can understand this right away.
I can understand that,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, for a guy who's listening to this, he cannot fathom how the color of a man's socks is going to be indicating anything more about him, because it's just not logical. If you're trying to decide whether or not someone is going to make you money, if you have to decide whether or not someone's going to be a good employee, you're not going to care about the color of his socks. You want to see how he's going to perform at his job. Men make logical correlations. Women don't. Women make emotional ones based on their own reality. Men and women are different. We have equal rights under the law, but men and women are not equal. The same way no two men are equal, the same way no two women are equal.
The same way no two fingerprints are equal.
Thank you. That's a beautiful analogy. Probably one I should use. For a man. For a woman, it's not as... It doesn't enter her emotional reality as saying that men and women are not equal. How would I say this to a man? How do I write that into my book? Fellas, the way that your shoes are taken care of for a woman indicates how clean your private parts are. Our tech, who's a man, all of a sudden, it reached him. He said, really? It meant something to him. Because as a man, I can take a physical, direct correlation. If you're going to pay to the details, if you're going to pay attention to the details of your shoes, obviously you're going to be very clean in the way you take care of your private parts. Therefore, if you're the type of man and you derive pleasure from certain sexual acts involving the private parts, how clean they are will be a direct relation as to how good the sex you experience. Therefore, if you pay attention to the details in the shoes, it shows you pay attention to the details of your private parts. A guy can understand this right away. There seems to be more of a logical correlation there for men.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for a woman, that's not the direct correlation they'll make. So when I'm writing my book, I'm writing this for men. I'm saying, guys, here it is in language that guys can understand. One of the people that I really hope will benefit from my book, and if I can make the world a better place and save a couple of marriages, then my life here has meant something. I will want women not to read the book because they're just going to get offended by it, but if they buy it and give it to their husbands to try and save a failing marriage, I'm hoping that that's something they'll do. The book is written in such a way that, yes, it's going to be offensive, But damn it, guys will understand finally something that women have been trying to explain to them for years. But they try to explain it to them on a level that women are, that men just don't seem to connect.
They're explaining it to the men on women's terms.
Exactly.
And finally, Frank, you've come along.
And said, guys, don't be stupid. I smack them across the head and say, take care of your shoes because it represents what your privates smell like. Boom. All of a sudden, guys can get that. One of the reasons that I will tell men, take care of your shoes. Wear a ring that symbolizes something for you. Wear a watch that symbolizes something for you. Wear a necklace that has a particular meaning. Get a tattoo that symbolizes you more than any other symbol out there. Because with each one of these things is a story. Same thing about fingernails. Women paint their fingernails. They spend so much time in details with them. They buy the false nails. It's a tool to attract. It's a tool to represent. Ladies do this because how she manages her fingernails tells you something about her. That's why she does it. She's trying to say, I can't tell you directly that I take care of myself, but if you notice that my fingernails are wonderfully detailed and trim and cut, that should tell you that I would be a good provider and a good mother for your children. Guys don't get that. When a guy is told, keep your nails trim, keep your nails clean, because it says something about the way you take care of yourself overall. Guys don't think of that. We're thinking, yeah, but I work in a sewer. My hands are always dirty. I can't keep my fingernails clean. I work as a computer technician. I need my nails to be longer so I can pick up little tiny pieces and in building a computer. So how would I explain this to a man? The woman gets this right away. Oh, it's detail-oriented. I understand that. Women understand the importance of it. How do I explain this to a guy? Guys, keep your fingernails trim. Why? Because when a girl sees it, she's thinking about what that's going to feel like when you put it inside her. And she doesn't want to be cut. She doesn't want to start to bleed. She wants it to feel good. So if your fingernails are clean and trim, more likely that she will let you touch her on the inside. For a guy, that makes perfect sense. But for a woman, it feels like, is that all you think about? Sex? Are you just being crude? Am I just a piece of meat to you that and the only reason you're going to keep your hands clean is to try and put it inside me? I'm a human being. You don't like me for me. You only want me for my body. Women are right when they say that. What they don't understand is men communicate on a very crude level. If you communicate it to a man along the lines of, guy, make sure your fingernails are clean, or don't be surprised that your wife returns you down for sex when you try to touch her. Ah, I get it now, because I'm a man. Men will understand this type of communication. Women will be offended by it. I will be called a pig. I am expecting hate email. I already get some hate email, which you'll find on my website is posted, where people freak out about the type of questions that I'll ask my guests. But guess what? It works. I don't care about the theory. I don't care whether or not what I'm saying is true or false. What I care about is that it works, it makes men better men, they're able to have better relationships, and if someday, and this is something I also write in my book, if children are born of marriages, or of relationships, let's be politically correct, if children are born of relationships that should have terminated, but didn't because of my book, because it helped keep people together, it helped women feel emotionally satisfied, and it helped men lead the relationship to a place where they feel like men, and they don't have to feel like they're giving up their masculinity in order to maintain the relationship. And children are born of that relationship. That's an energy that I got to be a part of because I helped create. And in that way, even if I'm not remembered after I die, I'm still a part of that energy that I helped create. And that way, I get to be immortal. And that's my goal in this. Not only to turn a profit from the sale of the book, but so that I have made the world a better place somehow for my being here. And not everybody understands that, but that really is at the heart of the motivation. It's for completely selfish reasons. I want to be remembered, and if I can't be remembered, at the very least I can be immortal in the form of an energy.
From Loser to Seducer is the story of Frank B. Kermit. This book marks the triumph of a nice guy over most of his inner demons. This includes going from being a loser to managing 5 lovers at the same time, his first Valentine's date with 2 women at the same time, and getting back the one that got away. Want to learn how you can change your life? Buy this book at franktalks.com.